Melissa gripped the steering wheel tightly. Her hands were shaking. She kept looking over at Jamal, her stepson, who was lying in the passenger seat with his eyes half closed. He looked weak. Sweat rolled down his forehead, and his face had turned pale. He held his stomach and whispered, "It hurts, Mon. It really hurts." Melissa didn't waste time asking questions. She stepped on the gas and focused on getting to the hospital as fast as possible. Cars honked as she passed them, but she didn't care. The only thing that mattered was Jamal. Jamal had collapsed during basketball practice. The coach had tried calling his dad, but he didn't pick up. So they called Melissa. Without hesitation, she left her job, grabbed her keys, and drove straight to the school. When she saw Jamal curled up on the bench, she knew something was seriously wrong. At the hospital entrance, she parked the car and rushed to get a wheelchair. "He's in pain," she shouted to the nurse at the front desk. The nurse nodded and called for help. 2 staff members came out and helped Jamal into the wheelchair. They quickly took him inside, while Melissa followed behind, breathing heavily. Inside the emergency room, a nurse asked, "Are you his mother?" Melissa answered quickly, "I'm his stepmother." The nurse paused. "We may need consent from a biological parent." Melissa's heart dropped. "His dad isn't here, but I've raised him for 4 years. Please just help him." The nurse looked unsure, but Jamal's condition was getting worse. She finally said, "Okay, we'll start tests, but please try to reach his father." Melissa nodded and pulled out her phone. She called her husband again. Still no answer. As Jamal was wheeled into another room, Melissa sat down in the waiting area. She wore a black shirt and jeans. Her dark brown hair was tied back, but a few strands had fallen out. Her eyes stayed locked on the door Jamal had just gone through. Minutes felt like hours. A doctor came out and said, "We're doing scans and blood work. He's stable for now, but we need a guardian to sign off on some treatments." Melissa stood up. "I'll sign. I know everything about him. I'm the one who takes him to appointments, packs his school lunch, helps with homework, please." The doctor studied her for a moment, then handed her the clipboard. Melissa signed without thinking twice. Jamal's white shirt was folded and set aside by the nurses. His black hair was messy from all the movement. Seeing him like this broke Melissa's heart, but she stayed strong. Later that night, after hours of tests, Jamal was resting in a hospital bed. Melissa sat by his side. He didn't say much. He just looked at her, then closed his eyes. She didn't expect a thank you. She just hoped he would be okay. The hospital lights stayed on all night. Melissa didn't sleep. She sat in the stiff chair next to Jamal's hospital bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. Machines beeped softly around him. He had an IV in his arm and a small bandage near his neck from the blood test. Jamal didn't talk much. He just stared at the ceiling or looked away when Melissa tried to meet his eyes. In the morning, the nurse came back with a clipboard. She looked at Melissa and said, "We need a signature for further treatment. Are you his legal guardian?" Melissa hesitated. "I'm his stepmother," she replied. "His father's not answering his phone." The nurse frowned. "We usually need a parent by blood or legal papers." Melissa's heart dropped. She had no papers. She and her husband never finished that process. But she'd raised Jamal since he was 10. She was the one who made his lunches, stayed up when he was sick, and helped him through tough days. "Can you call the school?" Melissa asked. "I'm on the emergency contact list. Maybe that helps." The nurse nodded and stepped out. Melissa sat back down, holding her phone tightly. Still no answer from Jamal's father. Voicemail again and again. She leaned toward Jamal. "Hey, I know this is a lot, but you'll be okay. I'm here, okay?" Jamal blinked slowly but didn't respond. The nurse returned 10 minutes later. "We confirmed with the school. You've been his emergency contact for 3 years. That's enough for now. We'll proceed." Melissa let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. A doctor entered and explained that Jamal had a stomach infection. It wasn't life-threatening but could have turned serious if they'd waited any longer. Melissa nodded through the explanation. She'd done the right thing. Later that afternoon, Melissa went down to the hospital cafeteria to grab a coffee. Her hands were still shaking. She barely had money in her purse. She'd left work in a hurry and hadn't even told her boss she was leaving. As she sat alone with her coffee, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her manager. "You left without warning again. We can't keep doing this. Call me when you're ready to talk about your future here." Melissa stared at the screen. She knew what that meant. No job, no income. She tossed the phone into her bag and returned to Jamal's room. He was sitting up now, drinking water. Melissa smiled. "You're looking better." Jamal nodded slightly. "Yeah." She sat beside him again. "Your dad still isn't picking up, but I'll stay as long as you need me." Jamal looked down at his hands. "You don't have to. I'm fine." Melissa paused. "I know I'm not your real mom, Jamal, but I care about you. That's real." He didn't respond. He just turned away and pulled the blanket up to his chest. Melissa stayed silent. In that moment, she felt more alone than ever. She had risked her job, spent her savings, and fought to stay by his side. But he didn't see her as family. And he didn't know yet just how much she had already lost for him. The hospital released Jamal 2 days later. Melissa helped him walk to the car. He didn't say much, just stared at the ground. She opened the door for him and waited until he was settled before getting into the driver's seat. "We're going home," she said softly. Jamal nodded but didn't speak. On the way home, Melissa's phone buzzed again. She pulled over to check it. It was her job. The message was short. "We've decided to end your employment. We wish you the best." Melissa stared at the screen. She had worked there for 6 years, and now, just like that, it was gone. She didn't let Jamal see the message. She put her phone away, took a deep breath, and kept driving. When they got home, she helped Jamal to the couch. She made him soup, gave him medicine, and covered him with a blanket. He thanked her with a quiet thanks. Melissa sat on the chair nearby, watching him. "You need to rest," she said. "I'll take care of everything." Jamal nodded again. His face was pale, and his eyes looked tired. Later that evening, Melissa sat at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills. Hospital bills, credit card bills, and now rent. Without her job, she had no idea how she would keep up. She opened her jewelry box and pulled out a velvet pouch. Inside were her mother's gold earrings and a bracelet, the last thing she had left from her. She sighed and placed them on the table. She didn't want to sell them, but Jamal's medical bill had to be paid. The next morning, she went to the local pawn shop. The man behind the counter looked at the jewelry and offered her a price. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover part of the hospital bill. Melissa took the money and left, holding back tears. At home, Jamal was feeling better. He sat on the couch watching TV. Melissa brought him some toast. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, feeling better. Melissa smiled. "Your dad still hasn't called," she added. "I'll try again tonight." Jamal didn't answer. A few days later, Jamal went back to school. Melissa dropped him off and waved from the car. He didn't wave back. She felt the distance growing between them. That afternoon, she went to pick him up. While waiting in the car, her friend sent her a message. "Did you see Jamal's video?" Melissa's heart sank. She opened the link. It was a short video Jamal had posted online. He was talking to the camera. "I was sick, but I'm fine now," he said. "My stepmom helped, I guess. But let's be clear, she's not my mom. She's not my blood." The words hit Melissa like a punch. People were commenting, liking, sharing the video. Some praised him for being honest. Others called him cold. Melissa sat there, staring at the screen. She didn't cry. Not yet. When Jamal got in the car, she didn't say anything. She just drove. He didn't know she'd seen the video. And he didn't know what she had given up for him. Not yet. Melissa didn't say a word that evening. She made dinner like usual. Chicken, rice, and steamed vegetables. She placed a plate in front of Jamal, who sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. "Thanks," he mumbled, then kept scrolling. Melissa sat across the room, watching him quietly. She thought about the video. She hadn't mentioned it yet. She didn't know how to. The next morning, Melissa walked to the nearby grocery store. She didn't have money to waste, so she picked only the basics: milk, eggs, bread, and soup cans. She noticed a few people whispering as she passed. Two women near the produce section were talking softly. One of them glanced at her and then looked away quickly. Melissa kept walking, but her heart started to feel heavy. At the checkout, the cashier smiled politely. "I saw that video your stepson posted," he said casually. "Pretty bold, huh?" Melissa forced a smile. "Yeah." She walked home slowly, her grocery bag swinging at her side. Her dark brown hair was tied in a loose bun. Her black shirt clung to her from the heat, but she didn't notice. Her mind was somewhere else. When she got home, Jamal was gone. He had left a note on the table. "At Devin's house. Be back later." Melissa cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, and tried to stay busy. But the video kept playing in her head. Every word. "She's not my blood." That evening, her friend Lacey stopped by. "Hey," Lacey said softly. "I saw the video." "I'm so sorry, Mel." Melissa gave a small smile and nodded. "Do you want to talk about it?" "What's there to talk about?" Melissa said. "He told the world what he feels." "Kids say things without thinking," Lacey offered. "Maybe," Melissa replied, "but he meant it. You could see it in his eyes." Lacey looked at her gently. "You've done everything for that boy. Everyone knows it." Melissa's voice cracked a little. "I gave up my job, my savings, even my mom's jewelry. And he still says I'm just a woman married to his dad." The room was quiet for a moment. "Do you regret it?" Lacey asked. Melissa shook her head. "No, I don't. Because if I hadn't done it, he might not be here right now." Jamal came home later that night. He greeted Lacey with a quick wave, then went straight to his room. Melissa stayed on the couch, eyes fixed on the TV, though she wasn't really watching. As days passed, things got colder. Jamal barely spoke to her. At school, some of Jamal's classmates brought up the video. One boy asked, "Why don't you cling your stepmom? She saved you." Jamal shrugged. "She's not my mom, that's all." Those words floated around school. Some kids teased him. Others defended him. But at home, the silence between him and Melissa grew louder. She didn't ask for love. She didn't expect thanks. But every time he walked past her without a word, it chipped away at her. She didn't want praise. She just didn't want to feel invisible. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Melissa was cleaning the living room while Jamal was still in his room. The house felt heavy, like no one really lived there anymore. She picked up an empty glass from the table and noticed his hoodie thrown on the floor. She folded it neatly and placed it on the couch. Then her phone buzzed. A message popped up from her coworker, Jenny. "Is that your stepson trending on social media?" Melissa blinked, confused. She opened the link Jenny had sent and found herself staring at a video Jamal had uploaded. It was a short clip, maybe a minute long. He was sitting on his bed, wearing a white shirt. His black hair was styled neatly, and his voice was calm. "So some of you keep asking if my stepmom is like my real mom," he said. "I mean, she helped me out when I was sick, sure. But let's be real, she's not my blood. She's just someone my dad married. I don't really see her as family." Melissa sat down slowly. Her heart sank. The video already had thousands of views. Hundreds of comments were pouring in. Some people agreed with Jamal. He's just being honest. Not everyone sees step-parents as real parents. But many others were angry. "She saved you, kid. You sound ungrateful. Hope you realize what you lost." Melissa put her phone down. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just stared at the floor. An hour later, she heard Jamal coming into the kitchen. She stayed seated on the couch, pretending to watch TV. He poured himself some cereal and walked past her, not saying a word. Melissa looked at him for a moment, then said, "I saw your video." Jamal froze. He turned his head slightly, but didn't speak. "I wasn't expecting a thank you," Melissa continued. But hearing you talk like that, it hurt. Jamal sighed. I didn't mean to hurt you. It's just, people online were asking stuff. I didn't know what to say. So you said I wasn't your family, she asked. Jamal shrugged. You're not really. Melissa stood up slowly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were tired. I may not be your blood, Jamal, but when your father didn't answer, I came. I stayed with you in that hospital. I lost my job for you. I sold my mother's last gift to me to pay your bills. Jamal looked away. You don't have to call me Mom, she added, but don't erase what I did. He opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't find the words. Melissa shook her head and walked to her room, closing the door gently behind her. Jamal stood alone in the living room, holding his cereal bowl. The house was quiet again. That night, Melissa's friend Lacey called her. Are you okay? She asked gently. No, Melissa replied honestly, but I'll be fine. The next morning she got up early. She made breakfast, packed Jamal's lunch, and left it on the table. He didn't say anything as he grabbed it before heading to school. On his way out, he paused at the door, looked back for a second, then walked away. Melissa stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty hallway. She felt like a stranger in her own home. And even though her heart was broken, she didn't regret what she did. She just wondered if Jamal would ever see the truth. The next few days were difficult for Melissa. The video had reached more people than she expected. Her phone buzzed almost every hour with messages, comments, or links to people talking about it. Some neighbors gave her strange looks. A few people who used to greet her now walked past without saying a word. Others stared like they were waiting for her to break down. One afternoon, Melissa went to the local bakery to buy a small cake for Jamal. It had been a hard week, and she thought maybe something sweet might help bring some warmth back into the house. As she waited in line, two women stood behind her whispering. That's her, one of them said. The stepmom from that video. Poor thing, the other replied. He really embarrassed her. Melissa kept her head down. She picked up the cake, paid for it, and walked out quietly. At home, she placed the cake on the table with a note. Just something to make your day better, Melissa. Jamal didn't mention the cake. He didn't even say thank you. Later that night, she noticed a few crumbs on the plate. That was the only sign he had touched it. At school, things weren't easy for Jamal either. His classmates had all seen the video. Some made fun of him. Why you act like she's a stranger? She saved you, one kid said. Another boy added, if my stepmom did all that, I'd at least say thanks. Jamal kept quiet most of the time. He didn't fight back. He just sat in the back of the class, silent, as if trying to disappear. His teacher, Mr. Carter, pulled him aside one day after class. Jamal, I saw the video, he said carefully. I just want you to know, not everyone whose family has to be blood. Jamal nodded but didn't reply. He didn't know how to explain what he was feeling. Part of him knew Melissa had done more than anyone else, but something inside him still made it hard to call her family. Maybe it was pressure. Maybe it was pride. At home, the silence between them grew heavier. Melissa would cook dinner and leave a plate for Jamal. Sometimes he'd eat, sometimes he wouldn't. He stayed in his room more. She stayed in hers. They lived under the same roof, but it felt like two different worlds. One evening, while Melissa was folding laundry, she heard the doorbell ring. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, holding a small plant. I just wanted to stop by, she said kindly. I saw the video, and I just wanted to tell you, you did the right thing. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Melissa smiled weakly. Thank you. It means a lot. After Mrs. Thompson left, Melissa placed the plant on the windowsill. For the first time in days, she felt a little less alone. Jamal saw the plant later that night. Who gave you that? He asked. Melissa looked up. Mrs. Thompson, she just wanted to be kind. Jamal nodded. He hesitated for a second, then said, some kids at school are talking about the video. Melissa looked at him, surprised he was talking to her. And, she asked gently. They said I was wrong, he said quietly. Maybe. Maybe I was. Melissa didn't say anything. She just listened. Jamal didn't say sorry. Not yet. But for the first time in weeks, he stayed in the same room a little longer. And that was a start. You said. The next morning, Melissa was in the kitchen making breakfast. She cracked eggs into a pan and watched them sizzle. The smell of toast filled the air. For days, she had cooked without knowing if Jamal would eat. Sometimes he left the food untouched. Other times, he took it to his room without a word. But today, something was different. Jamal walked in slowly, rubbing his eyes. He wore a plain white shirt and sweatpants. His black hair was messy, and he looked like he hadn't slept well. "Morning," he said quietly. Melissa turned around, surprised. It was the first time he had greeted her in weeks. "Morning," she replied, trying to hide her shock. He sat down at the table and looked around awkwardly. Melissa placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of him. Jamal mumbled a soft thanks and began eating. They sat in silence for a few minutes, but it didn't feel as heavy as before. "Your dad called last night," Melissa said casually. Jamal looked up. Yeah. He said he's sorry he didn't answer during the hospital stuff. He was stuck out of town for work." Jamal didn't say anything. He kept eating slower now. "I told him you're better," Melissa added. Jamal nodded. "Good." After breakfast, Melissa began cleaning up. Jamal helped by picking up his plate and putting it in the sink. She didn't say anything, but she noticed. Later that day, Jamal stayed in the living room instead of locking himself in his room. He played a game on the TV, while Melissa sat nearby folding laundry. "Some kids at school still talk about the video," he said, not looking at her. Melissa stopped folding. "What do they say?" "Some of them are mad," he replied. "They think I was wrong." "Do you think you were?" she asked softly. Jamal paused. "I don't know. I didn't mean it to hurt you. I was just mad. Confused, I guess." Melissa nodded slowly. "I get it." Jamal looked at her. "I didn't know you lost your job or sold your jewelry." "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "I just did what I thought was right." Jamal leaned back on the couch. "I don't hate you, you know." Melissa gave a small smile. "I never thought you did." They sat in silence again, but this time it felt calm. That night, Jamal posted another video. It was short, only 30 seconds. He sat in the same spot as before, wearing the same white shirt. "I said something last week that hurt someone who's been there for me," he said. "She's not my mom by blood, but she's been more of a mom than anyone else. I didn't treat her right. I know that now." Melissa found the video hours later. It had already started getting attention. People commented, "Glad he owned up to it. This is how you grow. She deserves the world." Melissa watched it twice, then closed her phone. She didn't go to Jamal's room. She didn't need to. A few minutes later, he walked out. "I meant it," he said, standing in the hallway. Melissa stood up. "I know." Jamal walked over and, without saying a word, hugged her. It wasn't long, just a quick, honest hug. But it meant everything. Melissa hugged him back, her eyes closed. They still had a long way to go. But for the first time, they were walking in the same direction. The house felt different now. The silence that once filled every corner was slowly being replaced by small conversations, shared meals, and moments that felt real again. Melissa woke up early as usual. She slipped on her black shirt and pulled her dark brown hair into a ponytail. While she prepared breakfast, she heard soft footsteps behind her. "You making pancakes?" Jamal asked, rubbing his eyes. "Yeah," she said, flipping one on the pan. "Your favorite." Jamal smiled a little and sat at the table. They ate together without phones, without tension. Just quiet bites and casual talk about school and the news. It was simple, but to Melissa, it felt like the start of something healing. Later that afternoon, Melissa was folding laundry when Jamal walked into the room with his laptop. "Hey," he said, standing in front of her. "I want to show you something." Melissa looked up, unsure. "What is it?" Jamal sat down beside her and opened a page. It was a blog post. He had written something new. The title said, "Not my blood, but still my family." Melissa read it slowly. Jamal had written about the hospital, about how scared he was. He wrote about how she had been there when no one else was, how she had stood up for him even when she didn't have to. He talked about the mistakes he made, how he was confused, angry, and too proud to admit what she meant to him. He ended the post with, "I used to think being family was about blood, but now I know it's about who shows up." And she always did. Melissa finished reading and sat still for a moment. Jamal waited, nervous. "You wrote this?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I wanted people to know the truth. I was wrong. And I'm sorry." Melissa's eyes softened. She didn't cry. She just reached over and hugged him again, this time longer. "Thank you," she whispered. That evening, Jamal's posts started spreading online. People left kind comments, sharing their own stories about step-parents and chosen family. Some even reached out to Melissa with messages of support. Mrs. Thompson from next door dropped off cookies and said, "You did good, Melissa. Really good." Jamal's schoolmates also started treating him differently. Not with teasing, but with quiet respect. A few days later, Melissa got a call from a small bookstore in town. They were hiring part-time and had heard about her through a friend. She went in for an interview and got the job. It wasn't the same pay as before, but it was a fresh start, and she felt proud walking into work again. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Melissa and Jamal went grocery shopping together. It wasn't planned. He just offered to come. As they walked through the aisles, Jamal pushed the cart while Melissa read off a list. People smiled at them, some recognizing them from the videos and post. At one point, a little girl in the store whispered to her mom, "Look, that's the nice lady from the story." Melissa heard it and smiled. Jamal noticed too. "You're kind of famous now," he joked. "Don't remind me," she laughed. On the way home, Jamal looked out the window and said, "I still might not call you Mom. It just feels weird." Melissa nodded. "That's okay." He turned to her. "But you're more than just my dad's wife. I know that now." Melissa looked at him with a gentle smile. "That's all I ever needed. No title, no label. Just love, and the bond they built, one step at a time."